Blessings, everyone, and welcome back to our little look at Demetra George's second volume book. Today, we're going over the 10th and 11th houses. And I'm here today again, Matt Nolan from the Astrologer's Encyclopedia.
Hello.
And hey, thanks for being here again, Matt. And David Fisher from In the First Place. We just want to remind you that we are doing these little glimpses here on YouTube, but we are doing a more thorough deep dive into this book on our study group on Patreon. So you can go over to our Patreon, Hellenistic Astrology Patreon, and find ways to participate over there. There's a few different tiers, there's levels of participation, but we wanted to make like a little free kind of overview of the chapters here on YouTube. So that's our intention for today. Do you guys have anything that you want to say before we dive in?
Just that we are entering the last part of the chart, the last three houses. We're not going to cover the 12th house today. We're going to just cover the 10th and 11th because they kind of have the same some of the same topics associated with them, or they're complementary in a way, much like the first and the second house are complementary in final angle that we're going to look at, and final succeedant house as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it should be pretty fun today. Like these are really good houses, which we're going to get into. What were you saying, Matt?
I was just going to repeat what you said about, we're doing this as like a preview to a study group, which is just like a really great way that the three of us got to know each other, and it's a way that you can really like accelerate and deepen your learning by coming and talking to other astrologers. It's like so much better than reading or even watching videos or anything, because you get the like personal reinforcement of the topics through like becoming close with people.
Yeah, I mean, that was a big motivator for this. Like, we were all anticipating the book, like I'm sure everybody else out there, you guys were too, and we knew that we were going to read it and want to chat about it. But we've been studying together for a few years. We do a couple study groups a week. We did more back in the day, and they're just so valuable. We're thinking about a way that we can share them with a wider audience and share the experience.
Yeah, and the proof that we have a good response, like a good feedback, a good result from these types of interactions, is that there are more study groups popping out in other astrologers' channels on YouTube, other platforms that people are doing these types of endeavors. So I think it has proven in the past couple of years, especially through the pandemic, to be a very good method of spreading knowledge, especially this kind of alternative
astrologers. And
yeah, meeting with other astrologers and going over chart examples and stories people will tell, and just like it helps with different types of like learning and recognition and stuff, and just having that connection with people, as well as it's almost like free tutoring in a way, because you're getting so many minds together. We do tutoring, all of us as well, and we offer some tutoring inside of our study group for people that need like extra time if you're in a course or if you have a topic. A lot of people have troubles with delineation as well, which I think this book will really help with. Mm-hmm. But also, that's basically what study groups provide, is just like constant practice of delineation and things like that. So.
And it's like, I think it's good to remember that astrology is not easy. It's like you have to learn a lot of stuff to start to have it actually like make sense when you look at a chart.
And to put in other words, the people that you are exchanging ideas with, that are studying their own charts in their own way, they are the testimony for the planets in their chart. And so you're actually learning from the experience of those planets. When you hear some beginner astrologer talking about their chart and what they are able to derive from what they have been learning through it.
Yeah, I like that, David. It's a great point.
Yeah, that's the best. It's like I can like watch Matt like live out his chart, watch David me we all really live out the chart, and it's really fun to kind of develop those relationships. And there's such a vast knowledge when you're with other astrologers or just other astrology students. Like a lot of us that study together are all practicing astrologers, but even if you're not, coming together with a bunch of astrologers and a bunch of students is like really really pop
Yeah.
in.
And so, the group is, the three of us kind of know we're probably not really going to ever make too much money from this group. So we have an option for people who just want to join and really want to learn. That's, I think only $5, like a super cheap option.
Yeah, and
definitely worth
after
looking for.
everything, like I think we make $2 and then we split that. We're basically making it free. We just want to start getting people like the opportunity.
Yeah.
So, all right, let's jump into the 10th house. The 10th house is oftentimes called the midheaven, but in Greek it's called. Do one of you guys want to try to say that?
Mesuranema.
Perfect.
Is that it?
Yeah. Or praxis, which a lot of people will call it, which means action, to goad or to, kind of push into action. So we've got it being, where the sun culminates overhead, and a very active house because of the fact that it's angular. It's called the second best house. So 10th would be the second to the ascendant. And then, where the sun culminates or where it's at its highest elevation, it's moving towards its peak above the earth. She talks about it as having stable support because it's fortunately configured to the ascendant by the powerful superior square. It can be corresponded to the middle age of life because it's like the summit of somebody's power position in the world when the sun has like come to the top and it's like beaming down on the rest of the chart. So I think that gives us some place to start. What do you guys want to kind of highlight about the 10th house, or what should people keep in mind when they're thinking about the 10th house?
Well, we're talking about reputation, rank, authority. Just like the 10th house is the top of the chart, it represent places and people that are of authority. So if you have planets in the 10th house, it will represent people of authority in your life, as well as your own relationship with authority.
And Demetra, and she does say that. She says it's like a pinnacle of a person's glory because it's like the aspect of yourself that's most manifest or visible to the public. So, and she does contrast that at some point in this chapter about the 6th and the 10th. And how like the 6 can be like your job, but not necessarily your career. It can be what brings you money or your like job. But like the 10th house, when they're asking like, what do you do or whatever it is, it's like how you're known in the public. So you could be known as like a caretaker, known as a mother, known as a, a stay-at-home mom. It doesn't mean that, it has to be your job, but we do look at jobs differently, the 6th house types of jobs than we do like the 10th house jobs, or even when we're looking at the sensitive degree of the MC, which in Hellenistic astrology floats through the houses. So, you can also look at that sensitive area of the MC to look at, maybe how you're known in the world as well. But it's definitely like, oh, that person, they work at McDonald's, but they are an artist, say, something like that.
Yeah, I know. Schmidt will say that the ascendant is, if I can remember correctly, it's like that which the native undergoes, and the midheaven, which like you said can float around, but it's the 10th house is what they undertake. So it's like the ascendant is kind of what they're born into, the things that happen to them, the body that they're born into, the class they're born into, and the 10th house would be the action that they take following that.
So it would be more, again, at the top of the chart, it would represent the head. Aries is represented by this part of the chart in the, help me out.
Thema Mundi.
Yep. And so the most conscious, right, part of you, the part of you that dictates what you are going to do in relation to reality, how you are going to mold what was given to you by reality.
Yeah, and
just to be explicit, in the Thema Mundi, you have Cancer rising, so that would put Aries upon the 10th.
And if you think of the 2 planets that would be associated with Aries, would be Mars and the Sun, are both planets that are hot, like the middle of the day, and involved in action and authority, like David said. So it's things that are highly visible, like the Sun is things that are select and distinguished, and like
Mars also represents rank,
and Mars also rank and action and decision and struggle, those kinds of things.
Later in the tradition, this house was also considered to be the place of directional strength, so-called directional strength, to Mars and the Sun. You have all the traditional planets having these directional strengths in each of the angles. Saturn is the one and only in the 7th house, but all of the other angles have 2 planets in them. The 10th is Mars and the Sun.
Yeah, so, and she goes on to say, yeah, it's like you were saying with the Sun or Mars representing that Aries quality of the Thema Mundi. She says, you know, in a big picture, it can also be your social status or your reputation. So not just how you're known, but like how you're known socially, which I think is kind of implied, but I just wanted to say that again. And that the ancients, so yeah, rank and honor and all that, but the ancients called it the royal house. So when astrologers were delineating, they're looking for markers of, you know, success, royalty, prominence, things like that coming in the 10th house. You know, presence of a luminary there signified the potential for that rank. And she goes on, it's a really good chapter on the 10th house. I really, really enjoyed it. I can't wait to dive more into the study group because she gives a lot of delineations for each planet and what that could mean in the 10th house and how to distinguish rank and things like that by which planet might take residency there or their rulers. One thing I wanted to, there's actually 2 things that I wanted to mention that are like the controversy of the 10th house or something like this, which one, Manilius, and I know that we've mentioned this before, we have a friend that talks about the alternative planetary joys over on Premier Ata Philosophy. So you can go watch that, but he's getting that alternative joy scheme from Manilius, who is an ancient author, but sometimes kind of sloughed off because he
differs from the tradition.
He differs from the
The earliest
tradition.
that we have. No.
Yeah, he differs from the tradition, but he's in the Hellenistic era, so you know he's in that time period. But anyway, Manilius gives the 10th house as a rejoicing place of Venus, but otherwise we don't have planets rejoicing the 10th house.
Right. And you know the reason he says that is that the 10th house would be, which is foreign I think to people today, but the 10th house would be related to like marriage and children.
And she goes on to talk a little bit about that, but that's the other controversial thing that I wanted to mention, because we have in the tradition, in the Arabic tradition, in the medieval tradition, as the 10th house being another place to signify the mother, or you can look to the 10th house as the mother, 4th house as the father, which she seems to strike down pretty strongly.
She doesn't like that, yeah.
Yeah, she, you know, and she said that also when we talked about the 4th house, how the 4th house is the family, the ancestors, the mother and the father. But she says that here in the Arabic period, it maintains that the 10th house is the mother. And this goes back to a misreading and a mistranslation of a passage in Ptolemy. And she said that it should be noted that the mother was not included in the meanings of the 10th house by any Hellenistic authors. So
that's that on that.
Right, there's that. And then children were placed in the 10th house in addition to the 5th house, and it was important. And the reason why children were placed there or whatever is that children represented things like status and honor to the parents.
And marriage too, where she has the section where, you know, marrying above your class is a good thing, marrying below your class is a bad thing and can affect yours and your children's status in the world.
Yeah, and if you think about your legacy, right? If you're thinking about like, what was my pinnacle is that I had, like back in the day, like I had a family and I had 10 kids and I leave them there, you know, being a parent or your progeny was a part of how you were known in the world. And it did signify your status. Marriage and children signified status. So I think that's where we're getting a little bit of that, but that'd be interesting because I haven't used that a whole lot in delineations so far. So it's going to be really interesting to look, and we encourage you to look when you're doing chart reading.
And again, we have to point out the communal characteristics of this house. And it's the highest spot in the chart, but also is the highest spot of those houses visible above the horizon, right? The spaces visible above the horizon that represent consciousness and society in general and things that people can see.
I think that would be a perfect segue into the 11th house, actually, because when we're talking about, you know, it being like a communal house, let's go ahead and just segue into the 11th house, because the 11th house is a succeedant house. So it's climbing up towards the angle of the 10th house. Jupiter finds its joy here, and a lot of times it can be associated with that like community building or the blessings that help or the people that help us achieve our full potential. And so when you're thinking about like the 10th house, oh, this is my pinnacle in life. Well, it's the pinnacle of how you are known in life, and you have to be known by something. So you have to be known by your community or your friends or your colleagues or something like this. Like you're known by the group to have done something, right?
While the 10th house would be more of the individual's actions towards the community that would be characteristic only of them, the 11th house could be the group activities that they engage in that validate that unique 10th house expectation, right? So let's say you want to become a #1 salesperson in a particular company, let's say in real estate, and you want to become known as one of the best real estate agents in your country. For that, you first have to do the 11th house job of sustaining connections and relationships, networking with a bunch of people everywhere, a bunch of different people everywhere, so you can have people to sell your houses and people who will buy the houses that you're selling, right? So that would be the 11th house type of connection, where you're engaging with people, other realtors, other agencies, trying to find the resources for you to achieve that goal of being known as the one and only representative of that particular activity
endeavor.
in your niche.
Yeah, that endeavor. Yeah. So I'm gonna give our little like official 11th house now that we're all the way here. So the 11th house is the house of good spirit. So Agathos diamond. And yeah, the diamond was, you know, she goes on, it's actually a really amazing, both these chapters are really amazing about how the diamond is viewed. She maybe what the significations of the diamond itself are. And a lot of times it can be thought of like an angel or things like this. But it's a good place, it's good spirit, it's right across from good fortune, the 5th. So again, when David's talking about like the upper realm of the chart representing the spirit, so we have the fortune being the 5th house, and then the spirit being the 11th house. It's a good place, to repeat myself again, it's where Jupiter rejoices. It's succeedant to the 10th, it's moderate in strength and support, but nevertheless, it's the 3rd best in ascending order of the houses because it's rising to the summit of the heavens. And it symbolizes a person's, like overall, she says it symbolizes a person's motivation and hope for future success. I have a friend that we used to study with, and I don't know if she got this from the Arabic tradition, but it just stuck with me because she'd always call it pennies from heaven. So it's kind of like these little blessings or these little riches. And they talk about that as a Hellenistic thing too, where it's the blessings that you don't see or the little help that you get along the way. And it can represent actual fortune and money and things like that. It's in a superior sextile to the ascendant. So that's also why it is good. And it's favorable for like all matters of life. And she goes on, what I thought was like, all of you guys might be like, oh, if you have any malefics in the 11th house, which it can make malefic influences lessened, instead of like saying that the malefics might corrupt that house. She says the lord of or the malefic planet in that house can be mitigated. There are some other factors to that we're going to talk about in the study group. But
one thing I always like to think is that, you know, malefics, when they give good things, they give them still according to their nature. So if you have like Mars in the 11th, then you would have like benefits from Martian things. So you would have like friends from like a martial arts school, or like friends that you fight in a war with or something like that.
Exactly. Instead of it being like or like the positive significations of Mars, like maybe you're a cook or a chef that's really well known or something, you know, it's like, oh yeah, martial arts versus like I'm an asshole, I'm a violent asshole or something, you know,
which it's like can happen, but it could be like your friends, you're like in conflict with them a lot, and it's like good for you for whatever reason, or you work out with your friends, or with Saturn, it's like your friends live far away, but you're still really close, or something
Or
like
it
that.
gives you Saturnine things like your ability to abstain from, like partying or eating too much, like your ability to be disciplined, or something like
Right.
this. Like,
Right.
yeah, Mars would be like, my workout buddies like inspire me every day to like get
Right.
out there and.
And some people will be like, you're crazy. Like, why are you running a 50-mile race? And you're like, I don't know, I love it. Like, me and my friends all do it,
Yeah, so stuff like that. So anyways, I thought that was cool because, for some people they might feel like, oh, now my good house, my good diamond house is like mucked up by malefics. So, with some other things considered, it can be a mitigating house. And so why I'm saying that is just, that's how good the house is, right? Is that it can mitigate even like crappy rulers or planets with, other things considered. So, okay, so it can mitigate.
And like, just a final note is that, like, basically I think what we're trying to say is that, like, planets that are involved in the 11th house, whether by being there or ruling it, are like then necessarily implicated in good fortune.
Yeah.
So, like, the good fortune comes through the things of that planet and like the house that it's in, if it's ruling the 11th house, that kind of a thing.
And just to quote from Rhetorius, he's the author later in the tradition, but still considered in the Hellenistic tradition. It says, Rhetorius instructs that every lot or ruler of a lot or angle or house that's placed in the 11th sector signifies all good things. So, I mean, that's like how far they'll go, which is interesting. And again, come to like, there are mitigating factors with that. Retrograde is one, and we're going to go over all
right.
of that.
And it's like your 11th house ruler could be like so fucked that like it's useless, but it's like difficult kind of to get it to that place. Like its default state will be beneficial.
Fortunate, yeah. And I think that's one of the only houses that they say that about. And so it's just, it's just so positive in a way.
We have these two houses that are ruled by the benefics in the joy scheme, and we will dive deeper into that. But it's reaffirming that benefic nature, right? It's circumstance reaffirming a benefic nature of a planet.
Yeah, because Jupiter is in joy in the 11th, and Venus is in joy in the 5th. And like we said, they are a good spirit and good fortune. But I think what's cool about the 11th house, or the house of good spirit, is it almost shows that the nature is a little stronger, because even when you're in the realm of matter, when you're in the realm of fortune, you're in the 5th house, the 5th house can still get mucked up by having afflictions to it.
And like the 5th house is something that the native pours into, where the 11th is something that like benefits the native directly in a way that the 5th house doesn't.
Yes. And because it's of the spirited realm, it's a little bit less fragile to like circumstance and material. So everything like and not to say that it doesn't have a certain amount of striving though, because it's still succeedant, right? But it's going to give you good things on your way up or whatever.
Right. And I think it's interesting that like even the 10th house, they'll call it like the second best house, but it's more like they'll say best in the sense of like active, but not necessarily in the sense of like it always has like fortunate outcomes. Where the 11th, it has this feeling of just like going up and like striving up, like Elsa was just saying, to the top. And then the 10th house has like the weight of the angle like resting on it, which is not always like easy.
And I think that's expressed, it's always been interesting to me, like since the very learning of astrology, that they considered the 10th house the next best house after the ascendant because of its superior square. And as we know, superior squares are probably the most powerful damage that you could afflict. Like a superior square is like, oh man, I see you and I'm coming for you, and I have that ability to do that. And I think because of what you're saying, that applies a lot of pressure on the ascendant, probably good pressure, like to be like, get your goals done, go after what your spirit wants, like all of that. But there's a pressure because of that superior square. Whereas the sextile, it's like, it might not be the superior trine like we talked about in the 9th house, which the 9th house is the other part of this angular triad of the 10th. But it's it's so easy, right? Like a
Mhm.
sextile is just so like, oh, it's friendly and it's just easy and it's just there to support you in a small way. And,
Right,
it's like
right.
always there kind of giving.
Mhm. And well, that's interesting. I have a couple of things that just made me think of, but one is that the ninth house is where we get the trine from, which I think says something about where, the astrologers' heads were, that the like religious spiritual life is like the true benefit, where the 11th house would be like beneficial, but in slightly lesser way.
Mm-hmm.
But another thing is, to your point about the like kind of obligation and the square in the 10th house, I was looking at someone's chart last night, like we were just out and I was looking at a friend's chart, and she has Venus in Taurus right on the midheaven, directly squaring the ascendant. And so she's works in art, like she does she is like a painter, but she like sells art basically. But she has it in a day chart, and she has this sense of like, I really like my job, but it's so consuming of my life, and I feel so like obligated to give all of my time and effort to it, and like I don't always want to do it. So even though it's a benefic in Taurus, while it's in a day chart, she has this sense of like it weighs on her a lot.
Yeah. And it's like, so praxis is action, right? And so is karma. So praxis and karma both are translated the same thing, into your action. And we all know that to fulfill some kind of like goal or some kind of reputation, it is like a striving. Like there's different ways that can like affect us, but it's pressurized because we only have this one life and time is ticking or whatever. So it's like, it is putting some pressure on the spirit to, achieve, or to make it to its peak, or, to have that big burst. So I think it can consume people in different ways. But yeah, I think it's a challenge, like all the time when life requires action from us, there's some type of pressure or challenge there, I feel like. All right, so does that do it I wanted to mention one more thing. So we know it's like teamwork and cooperation and all this, but she also mentions that children were a traditional signification for the 11th house as well, which I also, as a Hellenistic astrologer, I don't use that in my delineation, but I will keep my eye out for it now that I know. I think it might be the first time that someone's put that to me. So thank you, Demetra. And I, comment below on what you think about that. But I think, or what she goes on to say is that most importantly, children are one of the main hoped for blessings in a person's life. Like, so if it's the pinnacle of like, I have my family and that's how I'm known, like in the 10th, it's like you get the good fortune to have healthy children. You're asking for abundance and blessings with your children. You're hoping for children. So that's why you can potentially see them there too. And then some derived house stuff as well. Can get us
That's
there.
a good, I had never thought about that. That's a good point, that like children would be a way to like increase your status, or you have like people to work for you now if you have children, that kind of thing.
And they're, a blessing or whatever. No, I'm just kidding. But she goes on to say that like the blessing of a child is universal, and there were so many pilgrimages and shrines and hoping and striving and wishing and praying for children, and
also Jupiter being related to children, childbirth.
Absolutely. Yep. And it being a blessing to have kids in your life and stuff like that. So I think that was the last thing that I felt was really pressing to cover. So thank you both again for being here, and everyone please like and comment below, or go over and check out our study group on Patreon. Matt, do you have anything that you're doing, or do you want to plug your Twitter, or where can people find you?
Yeah, so I'm on YouTube. I have not been on Twitter like too much lately, but I'll get back to it. So like Elsa said at the beginning, it's the Astrologers Encyclopedia, and I've been doing like videos on the planets, and so Saturn is going to come out this week, probably a little bit after this video. And then after that, I think I'm going to start getting into more like example charts. So I'll you guys are welcome to come on too, and we'll talk about like different celebrity charts. We'll do timing techniques. David had a fun one with Britney Spears. Maybe we can present some of that.
I've always wanted to do like a clickbaity like chart thing, like when the Johnny Depp trial was going on. I really wanted to like be like Johnny Depp's chart or Amber Heard's chart, so it could be fun to, kind of do that.
And just to show people how you can like connect all these things, because it's kind of like it's a shame, I think, that a lot of times astrology gets taught as like kind of like what we're doing. It's kind of hard to do it another way, but like house by house by house by house by house, and then you get like this one individual planet, and it's kind of hard to put it all together. So maybe some videos to show people how to do that.
Yeah, or check us out in our study group. We do a lot of delineation, and it really does help. So I'm glad that you're going to be providing that for people. Your planet videos are awesome. So anyone that wants to understand the planets and you're going through YouTube and checking out different things on the planets, definitely check out Matt's planetary videos. Super awesome. Loving them. Thank you. All right, David, how about you? Where can people find you?
My website is in the first place, astrology.com. You can find me in the same handle on Instagram and Facebook, and on YouTube as well. I haven't posted anything in a while, but I will get back to it as soon as possible. I have some ideas coming up. Just
awesome.
Wait and see. For now, just check me out here with Elsa occasionally on the Decan videos and the Houses videos.
Awesome.
And in our study group.
Yeah, and David and I both do tutoring through the study group too, because it's just like
tutoring,
everything's a group thing. Like we've been, do I have any 11th planet or 11th house planets? I work in groups. So like the Hellenistic Astrology channel, you can get a hold of me, you can get a hold of David, you can get a hold of Matt. Like all of our stuff is on that Patreon together, like as a group. Mm-hmm. So you can find all of us over there and in the about section of this page. Well, thank you all again for joining us, and we will see you next time, where we will have a little bit more time to dive in to just the 12th house. And then we move on to the second part of the book, which is going to be much more in depth. So now would be a perfect time to join over on Patreon, because we are going to be doing a lot of chart work. Mm-hmm. So,
and maybe just mention at the end, we meet the last Wednesday of every month at 7 Eastern time.
Yep.
So November 30th is the next meeting, and then I don't remember exactly what we said we're going to do for December, but that's generally when we meet, is last Wednesday of every month at 7 Eastern time.
Yeah, so if that works for you, hit us up. Thanks, everyone. Ciao. Till next time. Blessings.
Bye.
Matao kako bersama yo demikian soba da soba kena matahi banako di mawa demikian soba and soba atai banake ujuno baikana kamaya da ongai esa koyo okoyo masena mata ibe kana sabaso inakina tabaine toyo guys imbai toma tabaike Dio no makano yo ba sono me yabagorina Gamaya de goyo himi on my way go by Dio no makano yo ba sono me yabagorina Copa no hi tomato Ia matau kakau sama yo na bekena soa da soa kena da iba nakawa di ma na bekena soa and soa ate iba nake ujuna ikana kamaya da onga ikasha koyo okoyo matsena mata ibe kana sabaso inakina tabaine do you bounce in by your dome what the bike Dio no bekano yo ba de sono me abagogina Gamoyere goyo ime on my way go Dio no bekano yo ba de sono me abagogina Copa na hi tomato it's a market
Siento que eres grande como yo. Ya no me preocupa que me ames. Y siento que soy grande como tú. Y ya no me preocupa quién amar. Porque yo te amo. Porque tú me amas. Porque estoy cantando lo que tú me estás bailando, que ya no tengo miedo. Porque yo te amo. Porque tú me amas. Porque estoy cantando lo que tú me estás bailando, que ya no tengo miedo.
Ia matau kakau sama yo na bekena soa